Welcome back to the Fronczak Files.
I'm Paul Fronczak.
And I'm your co-host, Tracey Hastings. In last week's episode, our guest, Susan Wallert, took us on her emotional journey of seeing Jack's story on 2020 with Barbara Walters, calling the FBI to report that she babysat Jack and Jill as toddlers, and how she was an eyewitness to the abuse and neglect they endured. We also heard about her lifelong struggle with the guilt she has carried, and her feelings of being powerless to help the babies. Her interview was powerful and heartfelt, and we're deeply grateful for her contribution to Jack's story. This week, we peel back a new layer of Jack's story and address another missing piece of his puzzle. Where is the real Paul Fronczak? When Jack started this journey, he had two goals. One was to discover who he was, but more important to him at the time was where is the real baby Paul? He'd been searching since his own discovery of misattributed identity in 2012 with no real progress. There had been several men who'd been tested, but none proved to be the missing baby. Then one day in early 2019, Jack received an email through his website that began with the line,
"This is the baby you are looking for. The man in question is a 55-year-old father of 3 from a small town in northern Michigan. He doesn't know his daughter's DNA matched your brother's through a national database. She is too scared to tell him."
Jack chose to call the emailer Tipster. The original source of the information was someone in the man's family. Tipster insisted they and the source remain anonymous.
"What I know is that his daughter took a DNA test and matched to a man who was likely her uncle. There was some contact with this match, and the daughter obtained enough information to indicate that her father is likely the missing child. I know her father, but have not had contact with him in years. I have no idea why his daughter hasn't told him that he might be the real Paul, but I think he needs to know."
All right, so once again, we're lucky enough to have CeCe Moore, who's probably the best qualified person in the world to do what we need done. And she was there all along the way to help out. When I was lucky enough to hear I had a tipster help me figure out, or hopefully find out, the real Paul, I needed help. Only one person I could go to help me with that would be CeCe Moore. CeCe, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back. This has always been, well, initially to me, it was a two-pronged mystery. And so I didn't want to just desert you after one part of that was solved, although it's much more difficult for me to assist on the search for real Paul. But I've always strongly believed that when families have a missing loved one, they should always have their DNA in all of the genetic genealogy databases. We call it fishing in all the ponds. You don't need to do that as much anymore when you're searching for your biological family because Ancestry has so many people in it. But when you're searching for a missing person, it's more like a needle in a haystack. And so you have to have the family members, the biological family members in all those databases. So I don't know if you remember, but very early on, I asked you to get one of the Fronczak family members into all the databases. And I know that your cousin did that for us. And so that was something that I was always hoping would be out there fishing. And if one day the real Paul tested, or one of his children or even grandchildren potentially, that they would show up on that match list. So that's something that I hope that everybody does who has a missing loved one that they're biologically related to. I was so happy jumping forward, but to see that proof of concept, I think this was the first case where we proved that that was a viable way for someone to find their missing family members.
Yeah, and it definitely came in handy. So the whole thing was that I had a tipster reach out to me and say, "This is the baby you're looking for." But they wouldn't really give me any more information. So I basically, Kevin, who was we now know was the real Paul, his daughters did put their DNA on a testing site. They had matched with David.
Which is so interesting that he decided to test.
Because he was so against it. He didn't want to help me at all, didn't want any answers. And then all of a sudden, it turns out that he was doing this I
Hmm.
mean, I don't even know
I guess
why.
he was conducting his own search
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
way, right?
yeah. He was doing his own search. Never told me anything. He got a match as an uncle to these girls. The only way that could
Yeah, which just happened when we weren't checking. We didn't happen to be checking, which is another really important uh, tip that I've been telling families is they need to have someone checking it at least once a week, all their match lists, because people will see that surprising match sometimes and delete their data. And we weren't as on top of it as we should have.
well, I couldn't see it anyway because I'm out of Fronczak.
Right, you couldn't, but we did have your cousin, I don't know if I'm allowed to say her name, but we had your cousin in there that if we had been checking it once a week or so, we would have seen that match as well, and that would have been a big clue to us.
But, like everything about this story, nothing's been easy. You know, it wasn't like, "Oh, we happen to have the DNA on there. Oh, it was a match. We got an answer overnight." No, it was pulling teeth back and forth, you know? It's like I had her asking questions, dropping family names just to try to get some information. And when she responded, she was like, "Well, I can tell you about my mom, but I can't talk about the paternal side because there's something going on." And right there, we're like, "Oh, this is it." I mean, because why else would you do that, right?
Right, so when you reached out to me with the name, I just did what I know how to do, which is genealogy. I started digging into Kevin's mother. That was really the key person that I needed to look at. As soon as I started researching Lorraine, I was very suspicious. There were lots of red flags and things that we don't see in a typical person's genealogical profile. You know,
Such as?
she was pretending to be 20 years younger than she actually was. I actually had 2 different people in the tree at first because I was so confused, and then I realized it was the same person, but there was a 20-year difference, which is unusual. People sometimes fudge a couple years, maybe 5,
Sure.
but 20. So that immediately made me wonder because in the past, people have stolen babies when they wanted to keep a man. So if she had a younger man, for instance, that she wanted to keep that person and pretended she was pregnant, that would have made sense. And then also, she was crossing the color line. She was listed as black in at least one record. And then, as far as I knew, she was white in the other records. So that was interesting. So it seemed like she had this very, what do I call it? Changing identity. And she had so many surnames. She had been married so many times. And interestingly to me though, that Beatty surname, the one that Kevin grew up with, I just couldn't find where that came from. It seemed to come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And so it really seemed like this was the type of situation or person who might be involved in this kind of thing. Now, I hate to say that because I don't know her, but just from the records, from the paper trail, something was off. And now I'm used to seeing that when I work criminal cases, right? That is off. It's like a red,
Right.
right? Somebody's playing some games. They have this very elastic identity. And so she right away got my interest. And I thought, your tip was very likely valid. Yeah, remind me now. It's been so long. It's hard to remember everything we did.
Okay, so my cousin had matched to one of Kevin's daughters,
Right.
and my cousin had no idea who that person was. And you
Hmm.
were like, "They should because that's a super close match. You
Right.
probably should know who that person is." And then you said, "Ask about this family name and that family name." And so I'm asking questions as my cousin, and 'cause I wanted to. I mean, you know how it is when you're so close to an answer, you just can't stop. You've got to get to that answer.
And you've always been that way, your entire search.
Always. And, and there'll be a couple of days in between responses. And I'm like, oh my God, I need an answer. I need
Oh,
an
that's so
answer.
frustrating.
Right?
Every adoptee who's done a search knows how frustrating that
Oh,
is
it's
too.
the worst. I mean, one day
Mhm.
could feel like a year when you're just
Yes,
waiting, right? And
so true.
so the whole thing was when Dave scrubbed his stuff off the site and then the one daughter did, I thought that's it. We lost everything. And then all of a sudden, the other daughter popped up as a match.
Right.
And I was like, thank God for that, because for some reason that daughter didn't pull her stuff off. And that's when we started the conversation using my Dora's sister's daughter, my cousin, using their DNA. Thankfully, we were able to get that match, ask the questions, reach the information that we needed to really know this is it. This is the real guy.
Yeah, let me look at my tree that I built back then. So, and what a crazy tree for Lorraine. Again. Oh yeah. So Kevin has 3 daughters. I'm sure you've talked about that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And so one of them had first tested and matched to David, right? And then deleted it. And then do we know why the second one tested later or it was delayed
I don't
coming
know,
in?
but it was an act of God. It was
Yeah, that was a
definitely needed.
Yeah.
That was a question I had. If the sisters were in communication with each other and one tested and matched and realized something was wrong, took her stuff down. Interesting that another sister tested but didn't.
I'm so
Yeah, it
thankful.
really is interesting. It makes me wonder if she was more interested in having the story get out and be told.
That's what I wondered as well, if she was more interested in the truth.
Yeah, that's a good
That's
way
a
of
good way to
putting
look at
it.
it.
Yeah.
That's a good angle. Yeah. I was just thinking
Yeah,
divine
and
intervention. I like yours
Either
better.
way.
but I mean, it was just so shocking, wasn't it, Paul,
Oh,
Jack?
it was
You know,
crazy.
like I always believed it would happen, but it seemed like such a long shot. So when it did, it was just hard to believe. So I can't even imagine how you must have felt.
Well, the whole reason I started this journey was to find this guy. I wasn't even thinking about myself. And here we were right on the precipice of finding the real Paul after 50 years, 50 some years. And it was panning out. I mean, this was the guy. Thankfully, that tipster came forward and said, I really want to help you because I think this is the guy. And, following through, not taking anything for granted, just like we do in this business, right? Any tip you get, you've got to run it down because you never know. That one tip might be the one you need. And not giving up.
Do you know why the tipster came forward to you? And also, did they know about the DNA test match that had already happened?
Yes and yes. And I
Okay.
made a promise to them when they came forward that I would never divulge their information. So
Right.
it's in a box in a small island. And when I pass on, you will all get a key to that box. But not before.
Knew. So they didn't just have a suspicion. They actually knew because they knew about the DNA evidence.
Well, this person knew just from how she was with the family. She had the inside track on what was really happening. And what's funny is that Dave, my brother, never even mentioned this to anybody. He just kept it to himself.
Not even your
No,
mother?
he told her because the daughters
Mhm.
actually came and visited her
Before we even knew?
before we even knew. And my mom didn't say
didn't
a
realize
word. And then
Wow.
after it happened,
Yeah.
my mom decided to come clean because I talked to her on the phone and said, hey, anything new happened you want to tell me about? Well, what do you mean? I'm like, anything extraordinary happened recently? You might want to come clean. And then she told me. And I said, you know what? I know. I probably know more than you at this point. And she's like, wow. And that's when we started talking about things. It was amazing.
That is
It's a
amazing.
great story.
So, I did that initial research on Lorraine, but then once we had it confirmed, I kind of moved on. So I'm really interested in getting an update on what your team has found since that time.
Yeah, it's getting kind of deep with what we're finding out, right, Tracey?
It is getting sort of deep. A lot of tangents, a lot of new information coming in.
How many marriages did you find for Lorraine?
I think at least 4.
Yeah.
And then there's it might be a couple more that I don't think are confirmed yet. And like with needing the validation that there's more than one piece of evidence to support it.
Did you find the source of the Beatty surname? Because I could never find that. And then I think Carol even jumped into the tree and tried to find that. So is that something you guys have been able to confirm yet?
So theoretically, we're spitballing here, that Lorraine worked for the mob. There was this other person named Alice that also worked for the mob. She had a husband named Ray Beatty.
Really?
Kevin's name was Kevin Ray Beatty.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Pretty cool stuff that we're digging into. So
Yeah. And interestingly enough, if you look at a photograph of Alice, she strongly resembles the police sketch of the kidnapper.
right there. Yeah.
Interesting. You know, I probably built his tree because I looked for every Beatty I could find and researched them. You know, didn't build the tree back far, but just researched to see if they ever were in the same place as Lorraine or had some sort of connection to her. So I bet you that's somebody I researched.
You probably have a tree for that person. Yeah, I'm sure.
I think I probably do, or at least a profile, because
Sure,
there
yeah.
aren't that many Beatties, and I felt like I've got to be able to connect her because it just seemed to me, like I said, that it could be explained by her trying to keep a younger man. Like,
Sure.
we've seen that, right? And
Yeah.
other cases where a baby has been stolen. And so that's a mystery I would like to see the answer to. And I was just wondering how far you guys had gotten.
Well, we
So
could
that's-
definitely use your help on this because I think it'd be a lot more fun, right? So
yeah, I mean, I think you have an amazing team doing research with you now, though,
the
right?
best team, yeah. I mean, not you, of course. I mean, but I mean, it's
But it's always nice to have an expert weigh in and confirm what your suspicions are. Of course, it's always good to have work checked and rechecked and confirmed.
yeah.
Well, I'm always happy to still be involved because I get so busy, you know, with everything else. But then I wonder what has happened while I haven't been in touch with you, Paul. So partly that's what I wanted today was to come on and just find out what I've missed. What
Because we're curious, right? We
Yeah.
want to know everything.
So
you get really invested, right? And of course,
Absolutely.
more invested in your story.
when Alex and I were doing the second book, we started touching into these areas, and of course the Chicago mob was involved. So this lady Alice worked for the mob. Lorraine worked for the mob. Alice had a husband named Ray Beatty. So we're thinking that this person, theoretically, we're just, like I said, we're just spitballing here, that Alice was the possible kidnapper. So right now we're trying to find where their paths intersected.
Did Alice ever do time in jail or prison?
I believe she had a record.
Yes, I believe she has.
Because, you know, Lorraine was in jail in 1950 in the 1950 census. So you wonder how they could have connected to, or was it just that they were
Right.
working for the same people? And I was never able to figure out why she was in jail in 1950. Is
Hmm.
that something you guys have found?
I don't know if we've discovered what the charges were, but we have seen the records. But yeah, nothing beyond that.
All right, you guys should request those, try to get them. Hopefully they still exist.
Yeah, I'd love to see
Hopefully. We've been told a lot of times that the building burned down.
Oh,
We've heard that quite a bit.
that. A lot of fires back
We
then.
both heard
I
that.
guess, yeah.
Yeah, and I
that's-
mean, anytime you're doing adoption research, you hear that. I mean, ridiculous how many people have been told that their adoption records burned in a fire. And we've never found it to be true. We've always ended up finding something eventually to prove that that was actually not the case. So I think it's just an excuse, unless it's from, I think, you know, the 1890 census. That's not
sure.
The Great
And,
Great
I
Chicago
know
Fire.
that
Yeah,
Right.
and then the
Mrs. O'Leary's
military
cow.
records
Yeah.
that were lost.
Yeah.
Those are legit. But any other time I hear it now,
Yeah.
So
Huh,
CeCe,
really?
when we were in New Jersey last month, I got to talk to he's either a cop or an FBI agent that works for New Jersey, and he told me that he felt really bad because when he was working on this case, probably from when I opened the missing persons case on Jill, and he went to the hospital to get records, and they said that, I'm sorry, but everything was lost in the fire. And he's like, I don't believe it. That there wasn't any fire. Why won't they give me the records? And he felt really bad about it.
really
Yeah.
interesting.
Mm.
So even they are being stonewalled. Then.
Yeah. Somebody
Yeah.
who should be able to have access to everything was also being told the records don't exist anymore.
Yeah, the fire.
But
Yeah,
when you can't locate any confirmation of a fire, that would have been in a newspaper. That would have been
of course. Yeah.
a reportable event at any point in time. It would have made the newspapers. Our researchers have not found anything.
So, how much have you been able to learn about the FBI's work on this case? Were they brought in when David matched to Kevin's daughters?
So, from what I understand, Kevin had to actually beg them to come and take his DNA.
Really?
Yeah. I don't think the FBI wanted anything to do with this case
Why do you think?
because I think that they feel like they really botched it in the beginning and that they just wanted to sweep it under the rug. And when I started this whole thing back in 2012, and when we got to the point where they had to reopen the case, I don't think they really enjoyed that. And I don't think they really wanted to do anything. You know, I mean, supposedly they had all the original records from the case file box is full, but I filed FOIAs. We can't get anything. It just, I mean,
What's the answer when you file a FOIA request?
no response.
It had silence.
Yeah.
Oh, silence.
Yep, silence.
I think they're required to respond. So that
I believe they are, and still silence. I mean, unless it's they reserve the right to take a decade to respond.
that's interesting to know that Kevin really pushed for it because I thought he was always very reticent to become involved in this whole situation and even accept his true identity.
Yeah, but from what I understand, I guess he had to because, you know, the story was going around that he was, you know, he matched, his daughters matched as, you know, Dave as, you know, as an uncle. And that's the only way you could explain it, you know?
Yeah, I'm glad he was willing to do that then because I thought he was, very resistant to it. So
Yeah.
It seemed like a lot of the discussion that came about regarding Kevin, was sort of like his daughters were pushing the narrative. He's very private. He doesn't want to be involved. It's almost seemed to me like it was more them that were worried about the family secrets being exposed. Kevin had a drinking problem. He was violent. They were out of touch with him for many years prior to discovering that he was the real Paul Fronczak and then that he was also ill. And so then he reestablished this relationship with his daughters. And it just sort of seemed like they were pushing the narrative that they were sort of goalkeeping their father in a sense. Everything needs to come through us and we'll decide whether he should know this or not.
So did you ever get to talk to his daughters?
I did
Oh.
not. No, Dave did.
Yeah,
Yeah, Dave got to hang out with them.
your mom did.
My mom did, yeah.
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 And so did your mother.
Is she still in touch with them?
No. No,
Oh, that's
it
unfortunate.
is. It is, yeah.
That's really too bad.
You
I
had
mean,
said, Jack, that it seemed like when they came to see your mother, it was more on a information gathering thing. They didn't have much interest in getting to know her as a person or as a grandmother. They just sort of wanted to know, what did she know? They were
running
pushing for
reconnaissance.
information.
Yeah, they were just trying to
that's so
info
sad.
gathering.
I'm sure she's an amazing grandmother, so that's a big loss for them. But I'm sure they loved their grandmother, right?
Yeah.
That's part of the issue here is it's hard having your grandmother's reputation, sullied after her death. I can totally understand that. And I'm sure that's was some of Kevin's reticence as well, even if, it's sort of like you kick the dog and the dog still loves you and comes back. So
Sure.
even if he was mistreated or they were mistreated, I imagine there's still love and some sense of loyalty there.
And I also had theorized too that it's likely that the girls only knew Lorraine as an older woman, and she might not have been, as involved with nefarious activities as she was when she was younger. And so the woman they knew was just, they couldn't reconcile that in their mind.
Like raising a
that the
kidnapped
woman they
child.
knew. Exactly.
Yeah.
They just couldn't put those pieces together.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. But have you heard why they started questioning things? What was the reason they started even pursuing this?
Because of the DNA test.
Oh, so had they just taken the DNA test just
Yeah,
for entertainment, not because they had any suspicion something was off?
right. That, as far as I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that seems to be the scenario. Yeah.
Okay, I always assumed they thought something seemed strange or fishy and they had questions. Oh, so they're one of those people who took a test and got a big, big surprise.
Yeah.
And
Oh
we're
boy.
for it.
Oh boy.
Thank God they did, though, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I think this is a real proof of concept for other families. And now when I reach out to or talk to other families who have missing loved ones, I'm able to point at this and say, look, it worked here. We did it here. So this isn't just a shot in the dark, even though it is a little bit like searching for a needle in a haystack. It's not like reverse engineering your identity through your DNA. Instead, we've just got to hope that person or their descendants test. But there's absolutely no reason not to try that, and I'm not trying to get people's hopes up because it's not always gonna work because that person is gone or they don't test, but I think when children or young babies are stolen, it's usually to be raised by someone, it's not to murder them, especially really young babies, like in your case, and so I do, again, hope that this gives, you know, proof of concept and encourages other families to do this. Because when I first started reaching out to families of the missing many years ago, a decade or more ago, they sort of acted like it was a scam. They didn't fully understand the power of these incredible direct consumer DNA testing databases that we have now. And they obviously weren't as big and powerful then. But I had to practically beg some of them. I was offering them a kit, everything. They could manage it. I didn't have to be part of it. I just wanted these families to have that opportunity to find their loved ones. So I do still hope that we see many more of these types of cases. And I know there's been a few after yours,
Yeah,
but I hope there will be more.
I hope so too. CeCe, it's funny. I save all of our correspondence because it's always, even in the darkest moments, we have our moments of laughter. And when I mentioned that the last names that you wanted me to find out were matched up, you sent a fast email. You said slam dunk, and I'll never forget that. I was like, yes.
And
Yeah,
what a moment of elation, right?
Slam
After
dunk.
all the years and the pain and the waiting and the disappointment. There it is. There's the answer.
Yeah.
yeah, and that brings up an important point is a lot of times people ignore their matches because there's not enough information on there. There's not a family tree or they didn't use a full name, but you can't give up. Even if someone is using a username or initials, like you have to take whatever clues are there. Sometimes there are tiny little clues. And if I remember correctly, there was a little bit of information on that profile that was enabled me to confirm that yes, indeed, this was one of Kevin's daughters. And so I really encourage people not to just ignore matches, especially close ones, because there's not enough information. And we see that all the time in DNA detectives and elsewhere where people post they have a super close match, but oh, they don't have a tree. So, they just let it go. Or they think it's a coincidence. Some people don't understand that if you have a close match, that means you have a close family member out there, whether you know them or not. There's no like gray area. There's no if, ands, or buts. This is your close family member. So if somebody is listening to this or watching this that has one of those close matches and hasn't been able to figure out who it is, I encourage them to just keep trying. Don't give up. In this type of search, any type of search for biological identity or missing people, you just got to keep at it because, like we've seen, there's so many, walls that stand in the way of us getting to where we got. But persistence paid off. And I hope it does for Jill too. I
Absolutely.
really
And
hope
like you always say, CeCe, the DNA doesn't lie.
it doesn't, but you got to figure out what it's telling you. And sometimes that's a very challenging task, like it was in this case. When we saw that pop up, like, who can this be? Who is this person who's matching so closely to the Fronczak family? And you can't just walk away from that, especially in this case. We had to figure that out.
And if and anyone's out there and you're like on a mission to find something, when you get that little piece of information and then you hear nothing for weeks, but you know it's coming in, right? You got to keep waiting. Don't give up. Don't give up because when it comes in, it changes your whole life. that little bit of information that you've been waiting for, working hard for, right? You got to be tenacious. You can't stop.
And you look at this case, we were so elated, right? And then to find out that he was dying. Like, what are the chances
Yeah.
that we would find the real Paul and he would be practically on his deathbed? I mean, it's just this whole story, it's just been one thing after another. It's you couldn't make it up, right?
You
If you
can't.
wrote this
Yeah.
script, they would say, "No, this is not believable. No one's gonna believe this." But it's the truth here, and it's one of those cases where truth is stranger than fiction, huh? I mean,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh boy.
it's so heartbreaking. It's just so
Yeah.
But then,
devastating.
on the flip side of that, even though Kevin's health was in jeopardy, he was able to talk with my mom, with his biological mom. They actually got to talk a couple of times, and my mom got to say goodbye to him before he passed away. He died a day
Ugh,
before his birthday,
that's so
which is just,
devastating.
again, how crazy. It's just part of this story, right? I mean, you kind of expect it at this point, right? But
Yeah, it's like I always say, it's a race against time. All of these searches are a race against time. Too many times we found in a biological parent who passed away a couple weeks earlier, and in some cases we're actually searching for the adoptee. It's just so devastating when you miss that person by a few minutes or I should say a few weeks, a few months. But in this case, I'm glad there was enough time for at least those conversations to happen. I wish so much they could have met in person, though.
I do too. COVID happened, and then the health happened. It was just a perfect storm of not being able to meet face to face, but thank God for the telephone.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a blessing that that happened, but then it's also devastating that there wasn't so much more than that. I
And
always
it's funny too, because it's kind of ironic, right, Cece, that when we found Alan, since we found Alan, started working on his DNA, he passed away.
That's
So the
right.
timing
It's
was, I
kind of
mean, it could have went a couple of weeks the other way. We never would have had any of that information.
well, let's hope it's not a trifecta. So you guys need to find Jill.
Yeah, we have to find
Clear
Jill,
Absolutely.
Jill alive, right?
Yeah, alive, please. I mean, I always thought that the real Paul was alive, but I've certainly had my doubts about whether Jill is. So I think it's a even bigger challenge and less, you know, less chances that she will be found alive because I still don't understand why you would have been separated. And and I searched, I don't know if you know this, but I searched up and down the East Coast for any abandoned girls around the time that you were abandoned. I think our whole team did. We were digging and digging and digging, trying to see if there was any, you know, girl about your age that was abandoned around that time in a different location. And we just didn't find anything. And those stories always make it into the newspapers. Foundlings are always a big story. And so, why? Why, if she wasn't killed, either on purpose or accidentally, why did they abandon you alone? And what did they do with her? And why would they put her up for adoption and not you? Like, you were super cute. Somebody would have wanted you.
I like to think so.
I don't think you were a difficult placement.
That's funny.
It's
Yeah.
not like you were somebody that wouldn't have, been able to be adopted. So I still have all those questions about I it makes me doubt that she lived past, that year, past her second year of life. So I'm curious what you think now that you have been continuing with your research. Not that you've ever stopped, but you've really been uh, delving in even more lately.
So, Cece, not to change the subject, but you just said something really, really important. You said that a foundling would be all over the newspapers, right?
Yeah.
So you want to say something about that, Tracy?
So we agree with you. We figured that there would be all sorts of information about a foundling being found in Newark, New Jersey in July of 1965. Our research team dug deep and we found nothing substantial discussing him being recovered. We have also found contradictory information about the date he was recovered. We've been told that ads were put in local papers with photo potentially describing him and hoping a family member would come forward. We've never been able to find any of those ads that were supposedly run in any of the newspapers locally. None of it exists. It's all a
That
fabrication.
is crazy because I've worked hundreds of cases,
Yeah.
felons, and there's always something. I mean, and there's always an open case file at some law enforcement agency as well that was obviously never solved, but it existed at one time.
Yeah.
So have you been able to find a law enforcement file?
Fire.
Yeah,
Fire.
it was all lost in a fire.
Yeah.
That was lost. Okay.
Yeah, there was a lot of fires.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Really?
because we
Yeah,
heard
so
that
there's no real paper trail
'cause
for
we
it.
heard that
You
There's
don't have
no
any picture? There's no picture of you. Well, there's the one with where they're holding you and you have
Yeah.
the black eye, right? But there's
yeah, it's
nothing.
right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
But
what
as
was that? That was in what article?
That was a social worker, but that picture, it was taken in 63. I'm 65, but it was sent to my parents in 1968.
Oh, when they got you, did you have the black eye?
When they found me?
No, when your parents met you for the first
No,
time.
because they didn't get it was over a year.
It was that
'Cause
long. Oh, that's
I
right.
was in
'Cause you were
foster
Scott.
care.
You were-
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right, right. And so
But
they didn't even meet. Okay.
But yeah.
the policeman in charge of my case said that there was a huge campaign, articles and pictures put in all the papers in the surrounding areas, but we can't find any.
That doesn't make any sense.
And also
at
the
all.
day, because we're
Right.
finding out that supposedly it was July 2nd that I was abandoned, but now we're seeing July 7th.
7th has been mentioned that he actually was recovered later than the original date. So there's
That's why
confusion about the day.
Yeah, that's why I've always avoided saying exactly when you were found because I could never find that either.
Yeah, there's
I
a piece
okay,
here. Yeah, there's just breadcrumbs, but there's nothing to
Well, my
substantiate
parents
it.
have legal documents saying that, Scott McKinley was found July 2nd, 1965.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
It's on
but
them?
now it's the whole thing is a conspiracy thing. There's something running deep here.
I don't know how that can be. I mean, why
Yeah.
would that be? Do you have a theory about how that
Oh, we have theories,
figures in?
which I can't get into right now, but we definitely have theories.
Really?
So you're like,
So, yes, when are we gonna talk about the theories, right?
yeah,
Yeah, I was coming on so you guys could fill me in. Now you're paying me
I don't know
that.
what episode will that be, Tracy? When we start talking about the theories.
That'll probably be an episode or two down the road when we're going to talk about theories and about the things that we've recovered as we've been researching the podcast, because it's interesting that we're doing a podcast on a story which has been very well researched. It's been covered in books and film and news and all sorts of things, and we're still discovering things that were unknown. We're still digging them up.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Like I said, I got pulled into so many things after we identified your biological family and then also the real Paul. So I'm kind of in and out. But I've always felt that there was more to find. And, new things are digitized all of the time, which is also
Absolutely.
people to understand. Like the 1950 census was not out when I was first
Right.
Lorraine. That didn't come out till 2022, and I think it was 2019, is that right? When we found the real Paul?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so people should also remember that. You need to revisit this research. New newspapers are digitized all the time and put online, and that is a gold mine. And so it's not a static thing. It's not like if you research something, that's the end of it. There are new things that will pop up over the months and years and decades even. So like I haven't revisited my own family tree in so long, and I'm sure there's all kinds of new discoveries I could make. So I'm not really surprised that you found more, and it always has been kind of murky, right? This has never been.
I love your
It's
word
no
choice.
less clear.
Yeah, murky.
Yeah, it's even murkier than before,
I'm
actually.
just so glad you have a really skilled, dedicated team digging into it in order to try to find as much as you can and shed some light on this because I feel like, we solved some mysteries and then new ones, of course, popped up. And that's been, again, a theme of your entire search is you don't seem to be able to just get answers and rest. You always have new mysteries you have to solve.
Yeah, it's something always popping up, right?
Yeah.
Just can't be easy.
Yeah. It's hard not to have all the answers, right? We're people who want all the answers. We want to understand
Yeah,
how these happened and why. And unfortunately, we'll probably never get the why on a lot of it. But
but not for lack of trying.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's for sure. You have been the most dedicated person pursuing your story I've ever known. And now I'm glad you have some researchers helping you because it's really just way too big of a job for one person or two people.
It is, yeah. And I'm thankful we have you, CeCe.
No, absolutely.
I'm always here. Like I said, I think you have a great team, but I'm always here for consultation if you want.
Greatly appreciated.
We couldn't have anybody better.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm impressed with your team. So I'm just really glad that you have been able to get that team together and continue to pursue this and share the story because I don't think anyone knows. Well, nobody knows the full story, but no one even knows everything that has been discovered. And so this story just continues to be fascinating.
new layers every day. I mean, I was even shocked finding out this latest stuff that we just found out. I was like, wow.
Well, now you're taunting me. Come on.
So much more to come,
You
CeCe.
can't say something like that.
Right?
Now I'm gonna
That's
be like your listeners and, just having to wait for answers.
that's great. Yeah. Well, no spoilers. I've always been a no spoilers guy, right?
Okay,
Until
no
we have
spoilers,
a
but
decent foundation for these theories, we have to keep them as theories, right? Yeah, for now.
yeah, you'll have to tell me offline.
Absolutely.
Sorry. My team's gonna wanna know too. I'm sure Carol will be chomping at the bit.
I was
Yeah.
thinking of Carol.
Yeah.
She's going to want to know everything
Yeah,
too.
she's cool.
Yeah, she is, because like I said, I did all that initial research when you first reached out to me about the tip, but then she was really interested too and asked if she could look at the Beatty tree. So she's also worked on it and like I said, tried to figure out some of the answers that eluded me and she hasn't been able to either. So I think, we'll both always be very invested in all aspects of your story.
Greatly appreciated. I think we'll have some new stuff coming out real soon because we're digging.
Okay, good.
We're digging.
Good, good. I'm hopeful. And, most of all that the real Jill is out there and alive and that you can reunite. I mean, that is almost impossible to imagine.
It's going to happen. And CeCe, I just had a thought too. It's really sad that I started this whole mission to find my parents' kidnapped child. We found him and we had to keep it hush hush. We couldn't even talk about it. We couldn't celebrate it. We couldn't tell the world that we found this guy and
And you couldn't meet him.
couldn't meet him. Couldn't do.
Like it should have been you and him. Like we should have pictures of you together and, a conversation.
Me handing him
And
his birth certificate.
yeah,
those-
that would have been
All those, I played those things in my
incredible.
head a million times because I knew I was going to find him. And all those
And if
things,
he hadn't been sick, I think it would have happened. People come around, right? Sometimes we find birth
I don't know, do
parents
they?
who are not ready to connect. And then a couple years later, circumstances change. People come around. We've seen it time and time again. We always tell adoptees and people searching for their birth father not to burn the bridge and just be patient, be respectful, because we have seen it change over time. And so I feel like if he'd lived another 20, 30 years, there's a good chance he could have come around. I mean, I didn't know him, so I can't say for a fact, but I wouldn't have been surprised. But it was just such a limited amount of time. I mean, how did he even have time to wrap his head around the situation and the truth of the matter?
Yeah.
It's so incredibly
That's a
difficult.
theme that we see a lot, right? Is the person that's doing the searching has had a long time to think about it and to digest it and to be in a good place with it and want the right answers. And then you spring it on these people and expect them to be right in the same place you are. I want you to be the same as me and want to know all the answers and talk to me and tell me everything I want to know. But they have to take that journey to get to a point where they feel that they're able to enter into that discussion.
It's such a good point, Tracy. And, we can't imagine what it was like for him to learn this. I mean, the only person who could probably come close is you, Paul, but still, like to live your whole life and not know. And then
Yeah.
to have that sprung on you after 55 years. I mean, wasn't he 55 when we found him?
54, yeah.
That's 54, 55. I mean, that just must be so earth shaking, earth shattering. You,
Yeah.
we can't really imagine. And so I have so much sympathy for him, and also facing his illness. I don't know exactly what the timing was, all of that, but it just must have been extremely difficult for
It's a
him.
lot to take in at once, for sure.
Yeah, facing his own, you know, death, potential, end of his life. I guess he must have known.
And yeah, the end of a life that was lived as a lie.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile that? How do you come to
Yeah.
terms with that?
And it
You could
sounds
write a
like he
book.
really struggled too. And yeah.
You could always do that.
Ways and unhealthy ways. And I mean, it sounds like he had some unhealthy coping mechanisms before he even knew the truth. But deep down, you know
Sure.
something is off.
Yeah.
And so that can certainly account for some of, his struggles. And of course, being raised by a person who would be involved in something like this. I mean, clearly, even if she wasn't the kidnapper, Lorraine knew something didn't add up. She
It
knew
wasn't her
that she was
child.
involved in something. Yeah, I mean, clearly, even if she thought she adopted him, like there, it had to have been pretty gray area, if not, black market adoption. This was not something that was done above board. And so that certainly, I'm sure, affected him. We're all affected by who we're raised by, that nature versus nurture thing. So it's, your whole story. It's really pretty devastating. And I hope that there's a happy conclusion, and Jill's out there and alive, and you can actually connect with someone because, right, your biological family, your closest biological relatives didn't want to get to know you. And then Kevin, the real Paul, didn't. So we have one more chance here.
That's it. Third time's a charm. It's got to be Jill.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
It's gonna
You
be her.
totally, earned that. I just, people don't deserve necessarily a relationship with their biological relatives when we're doing a search, but we always hope that that's going to happen. And so I feel like if anyone deserves it after all of the work you put into this and the dedication, it's you. You should have a close family member that embraces you and that you can actually have a relationship with.
And I really think about Dora, because Dora should have been the one that should have at least seen
Oh,
him
yeah.
face to face, because it wasn't like
Yeah.
she gave him away. It was
No.
he was stolen from her arms.
Nothing more devastating as a mother. I can't
No mother should outlive their child ever.
do.
And she outlived a child that was stolen from her.
Ugh.
I can't even wrap my head around the feelings that she must have had about
And the
it.
thing is, it's bad enough that, like, if he was kidnapped from a car or something like that, but he was taken from her arms. You can never ever get over that.
No.
And you would feel such guilt, even though there's none there. But
Sure.
you'd feel like I handed my beloved baby to this horrible person. I can't imagine how that would feel. It's just, yeah, she's the one in all of this. So I certainly feel for you, but she is the one in all of this that I feel the most devastated for. And also, your father didn't even live to see it. That's also devastating. You know, It would have been nice for him to have that answer too, to at least know that their baby survived and lived a life.
And the
And
thing is, he was so angry with me for starting this journey. All I wanted to do was find his kidnapped child, and we did. But he wasn't around to say, hey, I'm glad you started this journey, like my mom did. She thanked me for doing it.
she did.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because it was important. At the time when you're doing it, what's that saying? It's hard to see the forest through the trees. Like,
mhm.
I'm doing this, but you don't see that. All you see is me doing something that's upsetting things. But then when you
Yeah.
get a result like that, where you actually find the guy and you get to talk to him and have closure, I mean, to me, that makes it all worthwhile. If my dad could have seen that, that would have meant the world
Mhm.
to me. It's
Yeah. Now, how long was it between his death and when we found Kevin?
my dad died in 2017.
Okay, so 2 years. Again, race against time.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know that he was angry with you because it was so painful for him and for your mom.
Yeah.
And at least a little bit of that pain could have been healed knowing that Paul survived. Maybe he didn't live the best life, but he survived. He wasn't
Yeah, all of
murdered.
those possible scenarios that as a parent you might come up with. What happened to my child? How, you just have no idea that those questions could have been answered.
Yeah, and he wasn't out there being tortured, it doesn't sound like, that's your worst
Yeah.
case scenario, right? They survive, but somebody's torturing them. Like I said, he probably didn't have the best upbringing, but I don't think it was, that horrible where
Right.
what you would imagine as a parent who had your child
Yeah.
kidnapped, you think the worst possible thing.
And it's also ironic that my dad was a machinist and he was a machinist.
And, we see that so much in biological family
Yeah.
reunifications. It's unbelievable. Like, I'm not surprised by that in the least because I've thousands of times and, all of my stories are anecdotal in my examples, but it is absolutely proven to me that we inherit so much more through our DNA than people realize or will accept. And that's just one example. And there are many, many thousands of examples like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, CeCe,
They would have had a lot to talk about, wouldn't they?
yeah, of course,
Absolutely.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, CeCe, once again, you've saved the day for us. You always do things that just make this story so much better. And I am
Well, I
forever in
appreciate
your
that.
debt.
I've been honored to be part of it, and I'm glad you've kept me involved because it is hard. You do get invested in someone's story, but it's not your story, so you can't demand to continue to be involved or to be kept in the loop. So I really appreciate that you've kept me in the
I'm
loop.
glad you're still here because we have a lot more to do.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Even with my law enforcement cases, I'm so busy, I move on to the next, and I don't hear updates a lot of times until I'm going back and researching it, trying to find, like say I'm doing a presentation, a case study on that, and I'll go back and research, and that's the first time I get the updates and I find out what happened in that case. S- it's just kind of the way that this sort of work goes because it's in the end, as I said, it's not your story, it's someone else's story. And there's so many more mysteries to be solved. And so, you get pulled along with the tide. So it's nice to come back and revisit some of it. And like I said, it's hard to even remember all of what happened in 2019 when you called me and said that you had this tip. So I was excited about coming back and revisiting it and hearing, what has happened since and also having a refresher on what happened back then.
Slam dunk, CeCe.
Well, that's Paul.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here again, and I hope you'll come back because I know that we're gonna need a lot more help.
Well, anytime. I'm happy to come. It's fun, little break from my regular work to come and chat with you all.
That's fantastic. Any closing remarks, Tracey?
Just thank you again. This is always amazing to hear from you and get your thoughts and ideas and input. And we look forward to working closely with you as we move through this.
Thank you, Tracy.
And CeCe, the takeaway is never give up, right?
100%. And that is always my theme in all of the cases I'm involved with. And like I said, you're like the perfect example of that.
Just keep
So
going.
important.
Yeah.
We want people to have hope.
Thank you, CeCe.
Thank you.
The Fronczak Files is a production of Foundling Endeavors, LLC. Created, hosted, and produced by Paul Jack Fronczak. Co-hosted and produced by me, Tracey Hastings. Lead historical researcher and genealogist, Colleen Newarth. Lead genetic genealogist and researcher, Emily Ripper. Video and audio editing by Aidan Taylor. Original theme music written and produced by Paul Jack Fronczak and Rick Holland. Listen to the Fronczak Files on all podcast platforms, watch us on our YouTube channel, and find us on Patreon, where you can access exclusive member content. Thank you for joining us on the journey, and don't forget to subscribe.